Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation has emphasized the importance of conscientizing both inland and coastal communities about the oceans as part of South Africa's biodiversity heritage. The minister was speaking at the Oceans 20 outreach held at the Lowveld Botanical Gardens in Mbombela, Mpumalanga. This is all in preparation of the main G20 event to be held in November this year. Day 2 of the G20 Summit Dialogue focus was on oceans as a source of life. Inland and coastal communities should play a role in preserving oceans and other aspects of biodiversity. According to Minister Nzimande, South Africa has more ocean space than land. Oceans' influence on rainfall and temperature was also a point of interest as it plays a critical role in our weather and climate conditions. Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, Blade Nzimande, joins us for more. Minister, very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. Perhaps let's start off with talking a little bit about the impact of Oceans 20 and why you decided to have it in an inland province like Mpumalanga.
Good evening, Mpo, as well as to your viewers and listeners. Well, it's important because, firstly, this was part of our 20 reach out about what G20 is about and about what we are doing. But most importantly also is to say people who are living inland should not be disinterested in oceans, because oceans actually affect inland areas in many, many ways. So that was the main aim, to educate communities about that. Let me give you quick examples, Mpo. Firstly, the biggest river there in Mpumalanga is Ngwenya River, the Crocodile River. Mm-hmm. It goes into the Indian Ocean. What it means is that things that we throw into the river, they end up in the Indian Ocean. The Indian Ocean, or oceans, are sources of food. They've got fish and other related species. And also, oceans do affect climate change, but not only that, oceans also do affect weather. And it's estimated that 50% of the oxygen that me and you breathe actually comes from oceans as well. So it's very important, therefore, inland communities, not just coastal ones, to be aware that what they do in their rivers does actually affect the oceans. Anyway, the other way around, oceans are sources of economic development if properly exploited for the benefit of the people and communities. They are used for trading. We trade using ships, using oceans. They are used that we import things that we need and we export those things that we actually sell. Which means, therefore, we have to look after our oceans. Because if we use what is called the blue economy properly, then we are able to make a huge contribution to the development of our country, economically, to the benefit of all its citizens. So that is a very important matter that we're also emphasizing to communities. Mm-hmm. But also, I don't want this thing to be seen as one way. We were engaging the communities today, which was a very interesting workshop type of an event, telling them about the work we are doing as the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation to study oceans. Mm-hmm. For instance, science tells us that we only understand 15% about our oceans in Mpo. 85%, we don't understand our oceans. So there's lots of research that we are doing, which is going to be contributing for deepening our knowledge on oceans. But also I want to say, people who stay next to rivers, for instance, inland, they themselves have got their own traditional and indigenous knowledge of how they relate to those rivers, how they use those rivers. As science, we need to also harness that knowledge, because it's very important. Mm-hmm. If people use rivers for irrigation, people use rivers for a whole range of things. Although I must say I was concerned when one councillor told me that in the Crocodile River, still a number of people are still being eaten by crocodiles, which is another challenge that we actually have to engage with. But it's mutual learning, but also to see the communities are very excited to know about the kind of research that we are doing.
Minister, pardon the interruption, just for the sake of the stability of our connection there. I asked you the question, why inland? Because the many challenges communities in coastal areas are facing, like small-scale fishers who are talking about not being able to access permits because they're not allowed to catch the quantities of fish they need to sustain themselves. I mean, you've spoken a great deal about fish as well, the economy, exporting, ensuring that we know what comes from oceans and how that can make a difference to the economy on what we're selling and to whom.
So your question then is about people, coastal communities.
Yes.
Obviously, coastal communities are very important. The reason why I was emphasizing inland is because that was the orientation of our engagement today, because we're engaging communities in Mpumalanga who are inland, some of whom may not be immediately aware of the relationship between themselves and oceans. Of course, coastal communities are very important because they are much more immediately dependent on the sea, as you say, small boat fishing and a whole lot of other things. That is also a matter of concern to us because it's still the important part of what we call the blue economy. We are concerned, of course, that it's still your big companies that are just hauling fish in our seas in a manner that is marginalizing your small-scale fishermen and women who for centuries, by the way, have been relying on our seas for food and for trade in many other aspects. So the reason why I was biased towards inland is because we were in inland and the main intention was to engage inland communities about the importance of oceans for themselves as well.
What kind of dynamic then does that create as you speak about, finding some economic advantage within the oceans if small-scale fishers are saying that they can't even access permits? That in itself is a massive challenge.
It is indeed a massive challenge. Remember, as South Africa, by the way, Mpo, you may recall that some few years ago, we launched what we call the Oceans Economy Program, which is still there, which was actually saying our oceans economically are worth billions and billions of rands that could be coming into our economy if properly harnessed and with appropriate investments. Already in the continent, we have got interactions on countries that are along the sea on the importance of working cooperatively to grow the blue economy and also to reverse some of the impacts of colonialism. Because historically, our oceans were basically to take products, minerals from our continent to Europe and North America, and with no inward development. Now, there is a new opportunity to take the blue economy forward with the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which is wanting to promote intra-African trade. For instance, Mpo, is estimated that trade amongst African countries only constitute 15% of the total trade involving our continent, which means that 85% of our trade is still between Africa and the rest of the world. Yet there is huge potential for intra-African trade. And our oceans are very critical in playing a role in promoting intra-African trade, which in the end will contribute enormously to the development of our continent and address the many obstacles and challenges that we have.
Very well. Thank you so much for speaking to us this evening. Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, Blade Nzimande.